Is it better to buy or rent? That question is as old as real estate itself. The reason why there isn't a clear answer is that we haven't established what is the current situation of the future homebuyer or renter. On the user level, there can be a universal answer because all our situations are different the moment we hit that fork in the road. But if the question is it better to rent or buy from a pure investment standpoint, then the answer is a bit obvious. Because instead of asking the question from the resident's point of view, you're asking it from the property's point of view. And that is what we'll be going over in this video. Hi friends, my name is Adrian and welcome back to the channel, where we educate, share strategies and principles on how to invest in communities as a community. So if you did a search on YouTube, you'll find accountants explaining what you should be doing. You'll even find general rules of thumb to justify whether it's right to buy or rent. Here's the problem with those videos. They didn't see real estate as a long-term investment or as a business. That said, this video is not going to be a pros and cons of buying or renting. Instead, I'm going to teach you how to change the way you perceive your current or future residence. That is, it's either purely a place to live or if it's part of your financial strategy to achieve your financial goals. So who should buy a house? There are multiple supporting reasons to buy, but in my opinion, there are only two major reasons. First, if you're buying your dream home or your forever home and everything that goes with it. You know, you like the neighborhood, you like the climate, you like the school district, you have enough rooms for current and future kids, and your family is nearby. Well, obviously you can afford it as well. If you're buying for that reason, it's a no-brainer. You should buy the property instead of renting. Even if the property value goes down, it's not as important because you don't plan on selling anyway, at least not anytime soon. As long as you can afford to make the mortgage payments and you plan to retire in the house, then the equity you have in the home is a bonus. The second reason is if you are certain you want to become a real estate investor. Reason being is because early on, you set a clear expectation that the property you're buying is not your primary residence and it is for an investment. There are certain loan products such as the FHA and VA loans where you have to live in the property in order to qualify for the loan. That way, when you satisfy the requirement of living on the property, you can move from property A and buy property B to move into. You can now hold property A for cash flow. And you understand that you will become a landlord. Now, if you're not buying your dream home, and you're not going to be a real estate investor, this is why buying doesn't make sense. Let me tackle the most popular statement in this age-old debate. It is that when you rent, you're throwing away money because you're not building equity. The idea is that you're going to have to live somewhere anyway. And not unless you live in a camper or live with your parents, you're going to have to pay to live on a property. So why not build equity while paying to live somewhere, right? Well, I wish it was as simple as that, but it isn't. Because there are associated costs that come when you want equity. There are three hidden costs to be specific. Those are the financial cost, opportunity cost, and psychological cost. Let's go over them one by one. Firstly, the financial cost. You've probably heard one of the pros of buying over renting is that you have a fixed monthly payment. That is only partially true though, because when you buy a house, you'll be paying these four items for a very long time. They're the principal, interest, which comprises the mortgage payment, then there's taxes and insurance. Out of the four, only principal and interest are fixed, while taxes and insurance tend to fluctuate. For example, in Texas, property tax is assessed every year. Also, depending on where you live, insurance can increase if your insurance provider had to pay a lot of benefits that year. Under financial costs, you also have maintenance costs. There are two kinds. They are repair costs and capital expenditures. I mentioned earlier that when you buy, you're going to live there for a longer period of time compared to renting. As a homeowner, you'll experience more things breaking than a renter. Repair costs happen by accident or normal wear and tear, like a leak or a damage on the wall or windows breaking. In order to repair these, you can either pay out of your pocket by hiring it out or using your time by doing it yourself. Regardless of what you choose, you are going to pay for it. Capital expenditures, or CapEx for short, are items that make the property livable. The driveway, water heater, HVAC, the roof are some examples of CapEx. The thing about CapEx is that it's not a matter of if, but when they break. You might have noticed already, these items are expensive to repair or replace. And since you'll be living in the property for a long period of time, the chances are high that you will be replacing one of these items. The chances are even higher if you're not the first one to live in the property. So you have to ask yourself, are you willing to shoulder the cost to repair and maintain a house in exchange for equity? If your answer is yes, then you're depriving more of your hard-earned money of other opportunities, which is the second hidden cost. It is opportunity cost. One of the biggest cons for buying is the big upfront cost. The biggest cost is commonly the down payment for the loan. Depending on the loan you use, it can be between 3.5% or 20%. When you use that money as a down payment, you remove the opportunity to buy something, experience something, or invest in something. I would always promote delaying gratification and investing that money instead. But I'll cover what you could invest in later in this video. Now let's go over the last hidden cost, which is the psychological cost. Let's say you bought a property in the suburbs, but you have a long commute to work. Is that cost worth buying a home? Another is the weather. You might tolerate it now, but when you get older, is the weather worth buying a property in that location? What if your preference for a neighborhood change? Or you found a neighborhood that best suits you or your family? All of these things take time to happen, but when you buy, you're likely to experience it. Because the very essence of buying makes you stay in one location for a long time.
Well, Adrian, what if I move to a new house and just keep the old one as a rental?
If you did not fall under the category I mentioned earlier, where buying is part of your investment strategy, you are what we call an accidental landlord. And more often than not, slumlords or bad landlords are the result of property owners not wanting or capable of being a landlord. It is a big responsibility to be a landlord because people will be living in your property. Now, if you don't want the responsibility, but you do want to invest in real estate, I'll show you how you can do that in the next section. So let's go over why renting makes sense. If you are in your early 20s to possibly your late 30s, it is highly recommended that you rent. That is because you have time on your side. Instead of saving up for a down payment, you grow that savings faster if you invest wisely. But even if you make mistakes when you invest, you have time on your side. You can make up for those losses when you learn what a good investment looks like. Let's cover the 3 hidden costs I mentioned earlier in relation to renting. Firstly, the financial cost. Yes, rents tend to increase over time, but it can also stay the same, or in some cases, it can even decrease. So let's say rent increases to a point where it is outside of your budget. Or if you lose your job, whatever the case may be. You can always move out and rent a more affordable place until you get back on your feet. You don't have to pay those prices if you don't want to. But what about the maintenance cost? Since you're only renting, it is not your responsibility to repair those items. If you live in a good apartment, that should be taken care of at no cost to you. Let's move on to the opportunity cost. In comparison to a down payment, the upfront cost of renting is significantly smaller. So what can you do with that savings if you didn't have to put it as a down payment? You can buy a new car, go on trips, or you could do this. Let's say you have $50,000 saved for a down payment, but you rented instead. So you go to pallashq.com, then invest that $50,000 in a deal like this. In 5 years, that $50,000 grew to $97,500, or an annual return of 19%. So let's round it up to $100,000 to make it easy. And you invested it into another deal like this. In 5 years, that $100,000 is now $220,000. In 10 years, you turn $50,000 to $200,000. Whereas if you use that $50,000 as a down payment and the property appreciates 3% every year, in 10 years, you turn $50,000 to $87,000. Exiting in 5 years is conservative, but what happens if those deals exit even earlier? You can grow that same $50,000 even faster. You see, the money you can put to work today is more valuable than the money you get tomorrow. The problem when you buy is that money is trapped. It is growing, but it's growing at a slow pace. But if you rented, you have more opportunities to grow your money faster, as you can see from the example. Lastly, the psychological cost in renting. Well, nothing is tying you to the location, so you can always move somewhere else when your lease is up. So if traffic is worse going to work, move closer to work. You prefer to work at a different company? Move to that location. You have kids now and want them to go to a good school? Move to that location. Do you want to invest passively in real estate without being a landlord? You can do that too. Yes, you don't build equity when you rent, but what you get in exchange is more flexibility and more opportunities. And if you choose to invest on yourself and apply the example I mentioned earlier, you invested in real estate without the added responsibility. So if after watching this video, you decided to rent and invest a portion of that down payment in multifamily syndications, I recommend getting educated and start making relationships first. Because unlike investing in residential properties, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to syndications. But the advantages of more moving parts is that it becomes a system. And if the system is big enough, it is now considered a business that is run by professionals. So if you're looking for the first couple of steps to get started, watch this video next. In this video, I share only 3 steps to get you up to speed to multifamily investing. And I also share how you can invest in this current market cycle.